the end of November, which means it's time to do a November reading wrap up, and this could be a long one. Hi, it's Kate here, better known as Reading with Kate Louise over on Instagram and TikTok, and I'm here to bring you my November reading wrap up. So I definitely started the month strong in November, and I picked up Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh. Now this was one hell of a way to start the month, and I rated it 5 stars. This is my only 5-star rating of the month, and oh my goodness. So if you're not aware, this is the Boys of Tomlin series, and it follows Johnny and Shannon, who are two very different people from two very different families. Shannon joins a private school that Johnny attends after she is bullied quite heavily. There are 11 trigger warnings in this, guys. Please read them before you pick up the book. But this had me feeling so many different emotions. I welled up, I didn't cry, I was angry. Johnny is one hell of a person, I will give you that, and so is Joey. So I am excited to pick up Joey's story. But some of the stuff in this is hard hitting, guys, but wow. I really enjoyed this. Not necessarily in a happy enjoyment kind of way, but it was just so well written, and it didn't feel like 796 pages. Or 789, it was something like that. But this was just, yeah, definitely up there for one of my favourites of 2024, completely. Like, I could talk about this book all day. This book has my heart. Johnny and Shannon have my heart. I can't say much more on that, guys, but such an easy read. I think I read this in 3 days, and that's only because I had time. I started this at the end of the school holiday of my week off, and then I read it over the weekend, finished it the Monday night when I was back at work. But yeah, all I thought about until I finished this book was this book. My first audiobook pick of November was Fall I Want. So this is actually a cosy series, and I didn't realise this was actually by different authors, but I actually don't remember much about this book. I do remember it being a falling quite fast romance. I did rate it 4 stars, funnily enough, but now I'm starting to debate that because I can't actually remember a thing about it. I did listen to it at the beginning of November, but yeah, it was a cute little autumn read, and it followed 2 people who I remember. It was like a brother's best friend, and obviously the sister, and they did fall pretty hard and fast, and it was like a forbidden romance, and I did enjoy the premise of it. I was pretty hooked in audio. I don't know if I'd have felt the same if I'd have read it, but it was a quick, easy and enjoyable read. The next physical I picked up was something as a bit of a palate cleanser, as I did want to read Keeping 13 straight away, but probably thought it was not the best idea, and that was The Dream Home by T.M. Logan. I rated this 4 stars. This was so close to a 5-star. Like, I really did enjoy this book. So it follows a family who move into their home, and it's their dream home, apart from they find a secret not forbidden room, but they find a secret room, and it's full of lots of things, and the male main character takes it upon himself to try and figure out what is going on. This causes a lot of trouble. A lot of things start happening, and yeah, I actually found it so twisty and fast paced towards the end. I think I was just slumping a little bit at the beginning, plus work, but it did take me a little while to get into because nothing much happened until probably the 40% mark. I did switch to Kindle at one point to read this, but nonetheless, I would recommend it. If you don't own this book but have the Kindle Unlimited subscription, it is on Kindle Unlimited as well, so that's an added bonus. He's definitely an author I want to try and read the backlog of, if possible, this next coming year, but we'll see how that goes because I've got a few of those authors lined up. But yeah, would recommend this one. Next up was the book club pick for November, and that is Let's Split Up by Bill Wood. I actually really struggled to rate this book. Bill Wood is a fellow book talker, and I did enjoy this book. It's quick and easy, it is young adult, it is Scream meets Scooby-Doo. So you can imagine it's quite young written. So I feel like as a crime and thriller girly, I kind of didn't struggle a little bit, but the ending actually had me laughing, not shocked. Like, it seemed a bit ridiculous in my opinion, and that's why I struggled really with the ending. But that being said, the rest of it was quick and easy. It was a little slow to start, so it follows a group of people who try to find out what has happened with their fellow students who have been unalived in this mansion, allegedly by the ghost. So yeah, it is very Scooby-Doo, very Scooby-Doo, and I did enjoy it. There were parts that had me gasping in this, which is why it is a 4-star, but I think it is a low 4-star, maybe teetering on the 3.75 mark, but nonetheless I did still enjoy this. I would recommend it if you're new to crime thriller or a younger person. I do think it is a well written book. There is a second one coming, not 100% sure if I'll pick it up, but nonetheless it wasn't a terrible read, and we did read it pretty quick within the month of November. Next Next up was another audiobook pick. I did read a lot of audiobooks in November. I put them in to do a lot of work, and my workload is always heavy at this time of year, so I picked up The Mystery Guest by Nita Prose. I loved The Maid and only read The Maid a couple of months ago. This is the second in the series following Molly the Maid, and it follows her as there is another unaliving at the hotel. Apart from this time, it's not her that's getting the blame, it's someone who's in her position, who's in the position she was in when the last unaliving happened. So of course, she takes in her detective skills to try and solve it. I wanted to read this in physical, but when it became available on BookBeats, I kind of felt like I wanted to get immersed again in the voices of Molly, so I did pick it up in audio, and I did really enjoy it. It was another 4-star read, and I just absolutely adore Molly the Maid. I just think she's such a lovely character, such a lovable character, and it's just such a cosy read. So these aren't crime, these are mystery, and yeah, I really enjoy picking up this book, and I would recommend it to others. If you haven't read this series, then yeah, I am going to pick up The Mistletoe Mystery in December on audio, as it is a short story, so it'll only take me a couple of hours to listen to. But yeah, such an enjoyable read. I would recommend this series. Finally, time to pick up Keeping 13 by Chloe Walsh. So a lot of those books were audio, book club was stretched across the month, and I actually took one physical book break between Keeping and Binding 13. This one, I did only rate it 4 stars though. It took me longer to read this, so it took me over a week, which in reality for me is a long time even when working. It is 800 pages, however, and I felt more emotion in this book, so I did cry. So this is part 2 of Johnny and Shannon's story. So what I didn't mention about Binding 13 is that it ends on a little bit of a cliffhanger, which has you thinking, no, I want to read more. So I did end up picking this up, and I did enjoy it. It just took me a bit longer to get into, but oh my goodness, the things that happened in this book, I was crying. Not welling up, I was crying, I was angry. But I liked how this book ended. It had me smiling at the end, and I am excited to pick up Saving Six, and it will be on my TBR for next year, but December is Christmas, so it will not make an appearance. But yeah, I loved Johnny and Shannon's story and would absolutely recommend this series to anyone, as long as you check the trigger warnings, because again, there are quite a few. I didn't check because I'd read Binding 13, but there were definitely 11 in Binding 13, so goodness knows what there was in Keeping 13, but full of drama, full of emotion, absolute recommend. The next audiobook I want to give mention to is Wildfire by Hannah Grace. This again was 4-star, that is my general rating I think for November. So this is the second in the Maple Hill series, so the first being Icebreaker. I listened to this on audio only because Icebreaker was good, it was a 4-star read. But I didn't know how I would feel about picking this up. It's been sat on my TBR and I haven't actually felt inclined to pick it up. I think listening to other people's reviews may have changed like whether I wanted to read this book or not. But this follows Russ and Aurora as they go to a summer camp, and they've had like a one-night stand previously, and then they end up meeting at the summer camp. One rule, no fraternising. You can imagine, it's a romance, it didn't work out that well. We love the sprayed edges of this book, by the way. But I love their story. It's like both suffering with trauma, and yeah, it was just generally so enjoyable. Their like relationship and how it built, it was not just about like the physical side of their relationship. A lot of emotion went into that, and I did enjoy listening to it in the end, and like I said, I rated it 4 stars. Next up is Every Move You Make by C.L. Taylor. I have been told that this book is amazing, and it did not disappoint. I did rate it 4 stars. However, it's a very high 4 star. I could have rated this 5, but there was just something in this book that irritated the living daylights out of me that it dropped down. I think if I was doing the point in terms of stars, it would be a 4.75. It just wasn't quite the 5 star I wanted, because I was annoyed at the aspect of the book. It wasn't the writing, it was just something that kept happening in this book just annoyed me a little bit. I don't want to go into it, it will spoil it. But this follows a group of people who, at the beginning, one of their friends is unalived by their stalker, so they take it upon themselves to track their own stalkers to try and be able to live a less stressful life of worrying where their stalker appears. They get given a note at their friend's funeral to say that in 7 days' time, one of them will be unalived. This was not what I was expecting it to be, but it was so quick and easy to read. It took me a while purely on work basis, but I really enjoyed this. Like, I can't actually explain how much I enjoyed this. It was just that little ick for me that drop the 5-star, but I would absolutely recommend this, guys. And yeah, it was such an easy read. We are getting there now, guys. The next audiobook that I picked up was The Hike by Lucy Clarke. I purely picked this up because I saw it was available on BookBeats, but also because I have seen so many people and ah about this book. One of my friends at work actually DNF'd it because she couldn't cope with the points of view, and I was like, oh. So I thought if I picked it up in audio, it would be a bit easier to understand. So I actually rated this 4 stars, and again, this is another high 4-star. The only reason it's not a 5 is because, like my friend, I did struggle at the beginning with who was who. So there are, I think, 5 points of view. 4. So there are 4 friends that go on a hike, and yeah, so you follow all 4 of them at different points in the story, and they go on a hike, they discover something they shouldn't, which then actually triggers a series of events. Only one of them doesn't make it back, but honestly, I had to rewind when I was reading this because I was like, oh my gosh, because something happened. I was like, no, that did not just happen. I was hooked. I inhaled half of this in one sitting. So I think I listened to 5, I put it on a 1.5 speed, so probably about 4.5 hours of this in one fell swoop. I really enjoyed this. I would recommend reading it. It is a good read. Just persevere getting to know the characters, because I found it so gripping and so interesting that I just could not put this down. Next up is a pretty quick and easy one to talk about, and that is The Housemaid's Wedding by Freida McFadden. This was an 78 page book, and I rated it 3 stars. Now, it wasn't terrible, but it was pointless in my opinion. Now, as I've previously stated in a few of my videos, this is my personal opinion. Please don't come at me if you don't agree, but I completely understand if you don't agree. But in my personal opinion, Freida has just overstepped a bit with the Housemaid series now. I didn't particularly enjoy The Housemaid is Watching, but I have seen loads of people that have. But I just think it was one step too far for me, and the wedding was so pointless. So I'm trying to talk spoiler free here, but it is basically about her wedding. The beginning had me hooked, the prologue was really good. So I thought, oh, the premise of this, I wonder what is going to happen in 78 pages. The ending for me was so underwhelming, I questioned why I read it. But it wasn't terrible, which is why it's 3 stars. So it's a bit difficult to talk about, but I mean, it's 78 pages, it's not going to take up much of your time if you do want to try it, but I just pray that Freida does not release anything housemaid related. I'm still going to read it because I've read everything of hers and it's like a thing I need to do now. But yeah, bit of a questionable choice. The last physical that I want to talk about for the month is Forever After Never by LJ Florence. So LJ Florence is a new author, and this book doesn't actually release till December 12th, but she is a friend of mine. And I love this book. I rated it 4 stars. It takes a lot for me to rate a romance 5 stars, but this follows 2 people who actually accidentally bump into each other, but he falls fast, basically. And yeah, there's a lot of spice in it, but it's very tasteful spice. Like, I did enjoy the spice in it, and I did generally think it was a really well written book. And I'm not just saying that because she is my friend, because if I was, I would have rated it 5 stars. But honestly, I really enjoy this. It's actually quite a short romance as well. It's around the 200 page mark. It releases on December 12th, and it is going to be available on Kindle Unlimited, which is amazing. And yeah, I just think she's done a fantastic job of writing that book. I would recommend it, and it was a really enjoyable last physical read of the month. So the last book I want to talk about for November is Plot Twist by Bria Keenan. I rated this, you can guess by now, 4 stars. So this was an interesting read for me. I did struggle to get into it, which is why it's only 4. But it follows 2 people who kind of happen to meet online. So the main female character, Becca, loses her best friend, and she's a bit lost, to be honest. She then finds out a load of things that kind of unravel her a little bit. She is a teacher, shouldn't really be taking time off, but decides to take the rest of the academic year off. She goes on a reading retreat with one of her friends who she's met online, hasn't met in person, and has assumed that this person is a woman. She's very surprised when she shows up and the guy is stood at the door. You can imagine where this is going to go, but I actually quite enjoyed the premise of this and the relationship building in this once it got going. I think I should not have picked this up at the end of November because A, it's summer, but B, I think I was so rushed to get it done for the end of November that I probably didn't listen in as much as I could, and I tried to like spam listen to the rest of it, but I did still enjoy it. Like, the relationship building and the friendships that she built within this book were really, really lovely. So yeah, I would recommend it. So that is my wrap up for November. Please let me know in the comments if you have read any of my book, well, my book of the books I've read in November. And do let me know your ratings. I am all happy for people to dispute my ratings. Like, we all read differently and I love that. But yeah, that is my November reading wrap up. I am going to bring you my December TBR in another video purely because I have a few books I want to read. It's Christmas, it deserves a video on its own. So as always guys, thank you for watching my video. Please like and subscribe for future videos and lots of love for joining me.